TFA fam, week one is nearly in the books. We are going live here. It is during the Sunday night football game. We're going to get a jump on waivers to let you know what to look for in week two. So without further ado, Kev, let's just jump in, give the folks what they want. How does quarterback look like in terms of streaming options for week two?
We'd hope we didn't have to really talk about any streaming options for the most part, but Jordan Love going down with an injury really opens things up pretty quickly to needing to stream. And unfortunately, the Packers don't have a good backup quarterback because it's Malik Willis, and we're not really excited about that. But the streaming options are kind of thin. A lot of it's based off matchup. I think the one that makes the most sense, I think, is Baker Mayfield. He had a phenomenal day today. Completed 24 of 30 for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also rushed additional 3 times for 21 yards, finished with 29 fantasy points. Now he heads to Detroit to take on a Lions defense that last year did allow the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So I do think this is you're probably maybe one of your best bets. I think this also will have probably a pretty high total as well, playing inside the dome against Detroit. So I think Baker Mayfield probably makes the most sense as the best streaming option this week because the next two options are gross, but they're really good matchups. Deshaun Watson, 33%. He was absolutely abysmal today. Completed 24 of 45 for 169 yards and a touchdown. But for those counting at home, that's 3.7 yards per attempt. He did rush 5 times for 39 yards. The Cowboys consistently got to Watson as he was sacked 6 times. He was pressured on half of his dropbacks. But this should be a good bounce back spot as the Jags defense allowed the fourth most fantasy points to quarterbacks last season. And we just saw Tua throw for 300 yards against them as well. So I do think this is a bounce back spot for Sean Watson. I get it if you're not really feeling great about it because they look so poor today, but still this still is a really good matchup. It's one of the best matchups of all the quarterbacks heading into week two. Next one is another really gross one. It's Daniel Jones. This was a really gross day for him. Completed 22 of 42 for 186 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He really got lucky. He probably could have had 4 or 5 interceptions. I get it. This is a gross recommendation, but Washington's defense is dreadful. Daniel Jones has actually been pretty good against them historically. He has 10 touchdowns on 3 interceptions in the 7 games they've played. He's also rushed for 325 yards. But Commanders last season were also allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And we just saw, like I said, Baker absolutely nuke this defense. And so I do think Daniel Jones is an option. I get it. It's not sexy whatsoever. But I do think this is a really good matchup. I think another one is Geno Smith. He looked okay today as well against the Broncos, but I don't necessarily love the matchup. It is against the Patriots. Patriots pass defense actually looked pretty good. Did a very good job against the Bengals, but there really should be some sort of study of why the Bengals always start out so horribly. I mean, this is multiple years in a row where this team just looks absolutely awful. Nevertheless, I do think Gino would be another option that you could look at. But other than that, it's not pretty out there. It's a lot of really tough matchups, not great. So I could have put like maybe the Pittsburgh quarterbacks on there, but I don't know if Russell Wilson's going to be back for next week. So maybe an option if Justin Fields is sitting out there if you didn't go out and rush and pick him up. But again, don't really love it. That offense is not one that I'm really excited to target.
We'll go ahead and move on over to the running backs. Not a ton here either, which is, depending on how you want to look at it, it could be a good thing because it means we didn't have a ton of injuries. But if you're in search of a starting running back, not great for you either. I do just want to throw out again. I mentioned this whenever we did the week one waiver ads. This is for Yahoo only, but Ty Chandler is available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues. So if he's out there, I would definitely add him. He was plenty involved today. Aaron Jones tends to get dinged up. So if he's out there, even in an ESPN league, I think he was right around like available in like 40% of leagues. So you can take a look there. But other than that, some ads to talk about here. Justice Hill looked really solid to end the year last season. Continue that in week one. He saw 8 targets, caught 6 for 52. Only had 1 carry though, so his fantasy viability is largely going to be tied to game script. But with the Ravens' lack of pass catching weapons, I do think Justice Hill it will be involved even in games where it's a little bit closer and they're not playing from behind. So I think you can look to him. Tank Bigsby. We heard this offseason that he turned it around, looked like a completely different player, and that seemed to be true at least through the first game anyway. had 73 yards on just 12 carries. That matched what ETN's carry total as well. So we had a 50-50 split there in terms of the running back carries. I wouldn't expect that going forward necessarily, but this obviously makes you feel a lot better about having Bigsby at the end of your bench. He could have some standalone value here if this type of if this type of usage continues. And it will obviously be a valuable handcuff if ETN were to go down and miss any time for any reason. Jordan Mason, he is still sitting out there in a bunch of Yahoo and ESPN leagues, which really surprised me. Available in over 60% of Yahoo leagues, available in over 70% of ESPN leagues. If you have an open spot right now or the ability to drop someone that makes sense, like maybe if you have Jake Moody as your kicker and he's your second kicker or something like that. If you have someone you're able to drop to make room for Jordan Mason, I would get ahead of that just in case anything were to happen at CMC on Monday Night Football. He's obviously dealing with that calf and Achilles tendon issue as well. So if you can go ahead and add him before the Monday Night Football game, that's definitely something I would look to do. Kind of in the handcuff plus territory, Ray Davis. I will say Ty Johnson was in for the 2 minute drill. So it does seem like he is the preferred pass blocking back. But I think Ray Davis, he obviously has the body type to be able to overtake that. And he did see more opportunity compared to Ty Johnson in this game. So he's someone I think you can look to add. Obviously, that offense looked pretty good with Josh Allen today. Bucky Irving, the majority of his touches came toward the end of the game when it was starting to get a little bit out of hand, but he looked really good with the opportunity that he had. Makes him a solid handcuff stash. Bowles has said, right before the season started, that this is going to be a hot hand type of backfield. So if White struggles, we could see Irving slot ahead of him at some point this season, but I still think he makes for a good bench stash. Speaking of stashes, looking at guys like Marshawn Lloyd and Tyrone Tracy, Emmanuel Wilson did look pretty explosive in the 4 carries he got on Friday night, but I think Marshawn Lloyd is going to be able to upseat him as soon as he is healthy and able to do so. Speaking of just awful offenses, that Giants offense looked absolutely dreadful. So I think we could see Tyrone Tracy get involved because they are definitely going to need some sort of spark in that offense to have something go there. So Tracy again makes sense. The kind of the handcuff territory. Braylon Allen, Trey Sermon, Khalil Herbert. I threw him on here. We did have Roshan Johnson as a healthy scratch about an hour or two before the game. So it looks like Herbert is going to be the guy behind DeAndre Swift. And then some deep ads, Jaleel McLaughlin, Alexander Madison. Jaleel McLaughlin saw 15 opportunities today, which he turned into a whopping 28 yards, which feels almost impossible. But if he's going to be splitting time in the backfield with Javante, he's worth a pickup in deeper leagues. And then Alexander Madison, his box score is going to be a bit inflated here. Literally half of his 62 yards came on one play, but he was used more than what I think a lot of us thought he was going to be. We know Zamir White doesn't really offer much in the passing game, and Madison did see 6 targets today, so I think he's worth a pickup in deeper leagues as well.
Yeah, I did want to mention, I don't think you mentioned it, but J.K. Dobbins, I know some people may be looking at him, but I mean, in Yahoo leagues, he is only rostered in 48 or 49% of leagues. I don't understand why it's so low. So clearly, he's sitting out there. He's probably the number one waiver ad if you're in that. But everywhere else I looked, he's 70-80% rostered.
Yeah,
So like that's why he's not on this. I just wanted to mention that if somebody's looking on here, like, wait, why is J.K. Dobbins not on here? That's why. It just didn't make a lot of sense to put him on here, but he is available. And if he is the number one waiver ad for running back for sure. Because he
for
actually
sure.
looked phenomenal today. Much better than I think people were anticipating coming off that Achilles injury. So good news there for him anyway. So let's move over to the wide receivers. And very similarly, there's not a ton to talk about here in this position. Right now, I think there's a couple guys and players that we talked about last week. I want to talk about him again. Khalil Shakir is kind of borderline. He's rostered in 49% of ESPN leagues, but 65% of Yahoo leagues. The volume really wasn't there. We did haul in, 3 targets and he also had a touchdown. He should not be available in this many leagues because he's attached to Josh Allen within this offense. Really, there was no real pass catcher on this team that did a whole lot. It was mainly you mainly had Josh Allen doing most of it with his legs and everything else. So I do think better days are ahead for this passing offense, and Khalil Shakir would be the guy that I definitely would definitely want. So if he's sitting out there, he shouldn't be. Next up is Rashid Sheed, somebody I have talked about so much this offseason, and he pretty much picked up where he left off, hauling in a 59-yard pass for a touchdown to really start off the game. And last season, all 5 of his touchdowns were 30 yards or more. So this is definitely in his wheelhouse. But he also finished with 3 catches, 73 yards on 5 targets. And I think he's going to continue to see opportunities. We saw this offense move into the 21st century, and with the new offensive coordinator with Clay Kubiak, this offense looks much better. I think you're going to see a lot more design motions and everything else, and that's where I think Rashid Sheed can continue to come in. That's kind of a blowout. They didn't really need to throw the ball an absolute ton in this game, and so I think Shaheed is somebody that is definitely going to be a viable wide receiver 4 on a week to week basis. So I absolutely love Shaheed. 42% rostered. He should be much higher than that. I've just talked about him so much this offseason, and I'm going to continue to do it. Next up is old man Brandon Cooks, only rostered in 29% of leagues. He did haul in four passes for 40 yards and a touchdown. The most notable thing was, though, he saw 7 targets. And then we saw Jake Ferguson going down with an injury. So Cooks really could be a reliable source of weekly targets, as there really isn't much in anything else. It's him, CeeDee Lamb. Jalen Tolbert really didn't get a whole lot involved, but this was kind of a weird game, though, as well for the Cowboys, because they absolutely blew the doors off the Browns, and it really was never really that close. They didn't really have to open up the passing volume, but still 7 targets for Brandon Cooks is a very good sign. So he is also somebody that I think could be like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 on a lot of weeks. Moving over to that same game, but on the other team, Jerry Jeudy is only rostered in 42% of leagues, but he saw 8 targets, but he only hauled in 3 of them for 25 yards, but one of those was a touchdown. The Browns, like I've said all offseason, are expected to throw the ball a lot more. Obviously, they threw the ball 45 times today. I don't expect this offense to look that bad as they did all year. So I do think he could be kind of a reliable wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, kind of in that same range. And if things don't continue to work out for Deshaun Watson, I mean, you had fans today that were chanting for Jameis Winston's name, but at least they have a reliable backup if something happened to Deshaun Watson, because that man got absolutely abused today with the amount of pressure that he saw. But still, Jerry Jeudy, I think, is an option. And it wouldn't be a waiver show if we never talk about Greg Dortch. We're going to talk about him again. I feel like we talk about him every year. This is like a very pro Greg Dortch podcast show, fantasy football show here. But he's always undervalued. Every time we see volume, he produces. He saw 8 targets today, which was actually one short of the team lead, which was surprising because Marvin Harrison did not do anything today. It was absolute zero. But Greg Dortch had 6 catches for 47 yards. Which is only good for 11 PPR points. I get it; it's not a monster day, but I just think he's a reliable source of PPR points. I think as he is the slot wide receiver for the Cardinals, and like I've said, this dude has just continued to produce every time he gets an opportunity. So in PPR formats, I really like adding Greg Dortch. Jalen Naylor is only rostered 1% of leagues as well. Naylor drew a lot of buzz. It was kind of a trendy late round sleeper as later in August, especially with Jordan Addison possibly suspension. But we saw Addison today suffer what looked like a significant injury, but it was now looks like it's more of a week to week. I highly doubt he plays next week against the 49ers. Um, I don't necessarily love this matchup. That's why I didn't really put Sam Darnold in the quarterback streaming options. You could go there. I mean, Darnold actually didn't play too bad today. But if Addison's going to be out, I mean, this is an offense that's really, really, outside of Justin Jefferson, missing a lot of opportunities from other players, because obviously TJ Hawkinson is out for the foreseeable future as well. And so Jalen Naylor, who caught a 21-yard touchdown in the second half of this game, really could be an option here, especially. So I think Jalen Naylor at least is worth a look. I think he's worth an ad, especially if you're in like a 12-team league with 5 or 6 bench spots. At least I think Jalen Naylor should definitely be somebody you could look at. Wan'Dale Robinson, again, don't feel great about it, but PPR formats, he saw 12 targets today. He hauled in 6 of them for 44 yards. He's going to be second fiddle, obviously, to Malik Neighbors, but I do think he could be another useful PPR option. He's going to see a lot of manufacturer touches on a week-to-week basis. And then just some of the guys in some deeper formats. Devon Vale, I hope I pronounced that right, is only rostered 1% of leagues for the Broncos, but he recorded 8 receptions on 8 targets. But it was for a measly 39 yards, as Bo Nix really struggled pushing the ball down the field. But the positive thing is he was second team in targets behind only Courtland Sutton. I don't think he's a must-add, but in deeper formats, I think he might be a useful option on a week-to-week basis. As I think Bo Nix gets a little bit better, more comfortable. He could be somebody we look at. He was kind of somebody that was starting to draw some buzz late in camp as well. That is why they felt comfortable moving on from Tim Patrick in this offense. So I definitely think he's worth a look. And then Jalen McMillan, He's a clear number 3 wide receiver behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. However, the rookie had a solid debut, hauling in one of the 3 targets, but he for a 32-yard touchdown. I think McMillan's probably really boom or bust, but I think he's worth a look in really deeper formats, probably like 15 or 14 team leagues and above.
I will throw out another name here just because we were getting the news kind of coming in live here that Puka Nakua is not going to return to this game on Saturday night, or Saturday night, on Sunday night rather. So if that's the case, keep an eye out on Jordan Whittington. Played really well in the preseason, kind of fits more of that mold than a downfield type of guy. So depending on what ends up happening with Puka, Jordan Whittington is a name to keep an eye on, or a deep league type of ad. We'll go ahead and run it out with the tight end streams. Obvious one here is going to be Isaiah Likely. I don't want to overreact to week one. I think a lot of what happened was due to the fact that the Chiefs basically just said, hey, we're going to stop Mark Andrews. We dare you to do anything else. And Isaiah Likely popped off as a result. But on the other hand, I don't know how you just put what Isaiah Likely did to the side and forget about it either. I would tread with caution here, especially going in week 2 up against the Raiders. How often are they going to need to air it out? That remains to be seen. But kind of like what I mentioned with Justice Hill, like this team could definitely use another pass catching weapon outside of Zay Flowers. So Isaiah Likely is going to have to be at the top of the list here, but week 2 might not be the spot to do it. But I still think he's definitely worth the ad. A couple of New Orleans tight ends here: Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill. Juwan Johnson had a touchdown on 3 targets. If you're streaming tight ends, basically what you're hoping for. They have a matchup with Dallas next week, so they're going to likely need Carr to throw more than 23 times in that one. Likely aren't going to be up, 4 scores on the Cowboys, so it should be a little bit more friendly for fantasy purposes. And Taysom Hill had 5 carries, 2 targets in the game. They dominated from beginning to end. We could see him more involved in more competitive games. And then last thing to throw out here is going to be Mike Gesicki. Nearly had a touchdown today. Ended up being incomplete upon further review. The Bengals are now going to get a matchup against the Chiefs. I would not expect anything near what Likely did on Thursday, but if there is something exploitable there, there could be something for them to attack. And we still don't know whether or not T. Higgins is going to be available. That game also opened up with a 47-point over-under, and that is the 3rd highest on the week. So if you're looking for some points, when you're streaming tight end, you're basically hoping for a touchdown. Gesicki could give you that in week 2.
Yeah, and I'll throw in there. We'll have to wait and see kind of what's going to happen here. But Jake Ferguson looked like a significant knee injury. Looked like he could be out for the year, and that really opens the door for Luke Schoonamaker, who, if people aren't familiar, I mean, he was a 2nd-round pick last year. Like, I mean, so he just didn't really get the opportunity last year because he was behind Jake Ferguson, and he was one of the most athletic tight ends from that class last year. And so, I mean, in a class last year with Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta and a lot of those guys that got all the buzz because they got the opportunity early, he could actually be a pretty big home run. I mean, again, kind of talked about it with Brandon Cooks. There's not a lot here past CD Lamb in terms of real pass catching upside. And so Dak has been somebody that's always really relied on, his tight ends. And so, I mean, this could be a player who's shoved right into that role and could end up being a really monster ad for people that are looking for tight ends, where it's a really kind of, unless you drafted one of those top 7, 8, 9, 10 guys, really, it's kind of a barren wasteland for at times outside of certain players. And so somebody like this could end up being, because I mean, he is in the upper percentile. If you were to go to player profile and look this dude up, I mean, he is at near the top. I think he was like number 4 overall last year in terms of overall athleticism and stuff like that. So very athletic tight end. And so he could really be a name that we really look at too. I just wanted to mention him as well. We don't really know the full scope of Jake Ferguson, how long he's going to be out. But if it's a significant injury, like it looked like, he could definitely be a name we should be looking at.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah. So that being said, I don't think we had any questions in here. Should I keep Zay Flowers? Yeah, we're keeping Zay Flowers. Like, we talk about it a lot. Like there was a lot of really gross, like especially like from a lot of studs today. Like Tyreek was kind of the only one that really like went off today. Anyways, I mean AJ Brown had a really solid game. There were some other players. Jaden Reed had a monster day.
Nico.
Yeah, Nico had a really good day. So it wasn't all bad, but like there was a lot of really good players that really were terrible. Like, I don't expect Marvin Harrison to have what do you have like 1 catch for 6 yards or something like that. Like that's not something that's going to continue. Like a lot of these offenses look pretty bad today. Look pretty rusty. It was obviously a lot of these teams didn't even play in the preseason. So I just think I would give it a few weeks before I really overreact on things. But it could also be a good time to also come in and try to buy low on some players as well, where some of your league mates might be worried about some of these players. It's not a bad option either. So that being said, like I said, don't overreact. Yeah, for and Puka Nakua. So that's why I had Demarcus Robinson on there, and probably I would move him higher if Puka Nakua's injury is going to be something that keeps him out even longer. So because Demarcus Robinson now moves into an even bigger role than that offense, who I already liked. But that being said, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week. We'll be back again. All our normal content with our rankings for running backs, wide receivers, and we'll do the live show on Wednesday. So I hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Everybody got a W week 1. If not, it's only week 1. Don't overreact. We'll be back in week 2 to get that W. So we'll see you on the next one. Bye.